the craziness of what's happening in our country, to actually have a few moments to sit quietly and to learn. Those of you that have learned with me in the past, you know that I always start with an opening nigun and an opening prayer. So I am not going to succumb to the laws of Zoom, which means I am going to offer an opening nigun. I will tell you that in this period, I have actually learned to read lips really well, which means I can tell who is and who isn't singing with me. Therefore, therefore, if you were students that were getting a grade, I would let you know that I see that you're not singing. Since that isn't the case, this is truly and purely Torah Lishma. I can't make those statements, and yet I would really invite you to join in and sing with us for a moment. Divine Mother, one and only. What a time of turmoil to be thinking about this time that we're heading towards. And we're coming from a place of closure into a place of closure, which means that the intimacy that's being asked of us to be in your presence is all the more so. We're asked to rely on the reserves that we have inside of ourselves. We're asked to push our world of faith and beliefs one step closer and higher. I pray that we all can do this in a way that honors each other and supports each other, and that we find a way to stand and be in God's presence like never before. This question of what are you willing to surrender to be in God's presence, a rereading of Natana Tokef, I want to say comes from two places inside of me. One is Rosh Hashanah of 9/11, and the other is Rosh Hashanah of Corona. And there is a way in which I feel that both Rosh Hashanah are not, I don't know if there is a classic Rosh Hashanah. I don't know if we could talk about a normal or a normative Rosh Hashanah. And yet when I think about Rosh Hashanah, which is other, then I actually, I grew up here in Yerushalayim, I grew up here in Israel. That being said, I spent 16 years in the States in LA, and I arrived July of 2001. So my first Rosh Hashanah in Los Angeles was actually the week of 9/11, and I remember being in Beit Knesset and saying Natana Tokef, and knowing it was like never before. Like, I remember saying to myself that anyone that was hit by a metal beam, that was mi b'cherev. And anyone that, God forbid, suffocated, that was mi b'chanika. And God forbid, those people that jumped out of a window, and when they hit the ground, that was mi b'skila. It wasn't words of some kind of reality that was far and foreign, yet it was like totally immediate and real. And then this year to be saying mi b'magefa, who by plague, and here we are entering into Rosh Hashanah with such an immediate experience of it. You know, I was also talking with one of my rabbinic colleagues today, and about we're talking about how do you bring a community into Yamim Noraim this year from the experiences that we're going through. And one of the things that I said was, Any of you who have, quote unquote, been privileged to receive that phone call that tells you that you need to be in quarantine, then you know how in one moment, the next 2 weeks of your life change. It happened to me a couple of months ago, and I woke up on Monday morning, and it was a regular Monday morning, and I went out and I took care of some errands, and I did shopping, and then sometime around noon, I get a phone call that on Shabbat when you were teaching, someone was there, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks of my life, that the 2 weeks that I expected to live, the 2 weeks that I wanted to live, the 2 weeks that I thought I was going to be living, all of a sudden they were gone. And I had to completely surrender to what was going to be and what was in some way, the language that I used, the 2 weeks that God wanted me to live. And I had to let go, and I had to believe that the 2 weeks that God wanted me to live were different than the 2 weeks that I wanted to and thought that I would. And I had to believe, I had to find a place inside of myself to really let go of all of what I wanted for those 2 weeks, and to enter into this belief of what these 2 weeks that I was going to live were going to be. That being said, I'm very stubborn. And some would say that I have like control issues, and I have a need to be able to very strongly put out there my master plan. And COVID, this period is really demanding so much surrender. I can't tell you how many WhatsApp messages I've been getting about what is going to happen davening on Rosh Hashanah or not, who is going to be where or not, Shabbat meals, Rosh Hashanah meals. I like continuously who's coming to who is 500 meters from who or not, or yes, or who is a pod. We don't know from hour to hour, not clear. And yet I have this need to hold on. So I want to share with you a short story of an example of holding on for me, and then how this plays itself out here. So many years ago, many years ago, I was pickpocketed on Yom HaShoah in the center of the town. Okay, it is not nice to be pickpocketed ever, but there was something about being pickpocketed on Yom HaShoah in the heart of Yerushalayim, that did not feel right. So here I am, stuck, standing in front of the mashbir, for those of you who know the old mashbir. And what am I going to do now? I was upset. I was disheveled for a moment. And then I used to have this tradition that when I got change, when coins actually meant something, I wouldn't put the coins back into my wallet. I just throw them into the bottom of my purse. And then every once in a while, every month or so, I'd kind of like dig to the bottom of my purse, and all of a sudden I had a little stash, and I could do something with it, some kind of gift to myself. So there I am in the afternoon, Yom HaShoah, and my wallet was stolen. So I kind of go to the bottom of my purse and I collect all the coins. And I set aside how much money I need to pay for the bus to get home. And the rest of what I had, I gave to tzedakah. I gave out to people on the street that were collecting. Why? Because I said to myself, this person who pickpocketed my wallet can take my wallet, can take my ID card, can take my driver's license, can take a lot of things from me, but they cannot take my ability to give tzedakah. They can't take that from me. They cannot take from me my ability to give tzedakah. And therefore, I made sure that I had enough money to get home, and whatever was left, I gave to tzedakah. So this was a question of when something was taken from me by force, what part of myself am I still holding on to and saying it cannot be taken from me? So here we are, Corona and COVID, and in the beginning there were requests from different communities to add certain prayers to our tefillah every morning. And one was a request to add Avinu Malkeinu. And for many weeks, I would say in Shacharit, Avinu Malkeinu, because it's a prayer that we add when we have a fast. On the minor fast, we add Avinu Malkeinu to our tefillah, to our prayer. So I started saying Avinu Malkeinu every morning, and then from Rosh Chodesh Sivan leading up to Shavuot, as preparation for the holiday, I decided to not say Avinu Malkeinu, and then we know in the time of the temple, one could bring the Shavuot offering for 7 days post Shavuot, Shivat Yemei Miluim, the 7 days of completion, so to speak. So until the 12th of Sivan, there wasn't a question. I wasn't going to say Avinu Malkeinu. And then came the 13th day of Sivan, and I sat with myself for a moment, and then I said to myself, no, you're not going to go back to saying Avinu Malkeinu. Why? Because if I go back to saying Avinu Malkeinu, inevitably I'll end up saying Avinu Malkeinu until Rosh Hashanah. And then the Avinu Malkeinu of Rosh Hashanah and Aseret Yemei Tshuva and Yom Kippurim, it won't be the same Avinu Malkeinu. I mean, we all know, I'd like to believe that you join me in this feeling. There are certain prayers of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, that part of the magnitude of them is that we wait for them. We can hear them in our inner ear. We wait for them. We wait to say them. We wait to recite them. We wait to, and I said, if I continue to say it, then I won't get to Rosh Hashanah. Now with the gravitas of claiming something that seemingly Corona was taking from me. And in my sensibility, and forgive me if this is questionable for you, there's a way in which my sense of self and my voice, it comes through by holding on to something so precious and so dear that it can't be taken from me. And part of my sense of self and part of the ways that I recognize myself when I look in the mirror every day, and yes, get dressed every day and put on makeup every day and make sure that I sit down to work as if I was going to work, what can't be taken from me? And then now I'm asking to actually surrender something, because I'm asking to be able to let go from a place of strength, not being taken from us, but an offering, right? And there's an expansiveness of the heart and of the spirit when even in a time of constriction and limitations, we have the ability to go beyond ourselves and to make an offering and to give an offering. So this is where this question that I've been sitting with is, what will I surrender to live in God's presence? And again, as I said, also leading me up to Netane Tokef, how this year for me, Netane Tokef feels different, sounds different, it reads different, and what can that be like? I'm gonna share my screen for a moment so that you can see a piece of my sources in front of you. We're not going to look at all of them. We're going to look at pieces of them. And here you see at the top of the page, and this is, a pasuk from the Torah that I want to say, I know that we are all familiar with. And the reason that is on the top of the page is, with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our all, with all of our being. And it's like, Master of the world, you're asking for everything. Like, what about what we want to offer? If you demand of us everything, again, we could ask, is this pasuk a pasuk that's descriptive? Is this a pasuk that's descriptive? I always find it when I'm asked, I'm always challenged when I'm not given a margin of my own chesed, my own offering. When all the demands are put in front of me, and then, but what comes from the graciousness of my heart? What comes from the graciousness of my spirit? what is personal and to me, what is unique to me. And here I feel in this pasuk, we're asked for everything. So where does our individual voice come through? ואהבת את השם אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. So that is my challenge. And the different Hasidic masters, and thank God they're here, there are multiple sources on this page, they ask this question as well when they negotiate where our will and where God's will meets. And in two places it shows up strongly. One is in the four sources, the Meh HaShiloach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe, Mordechai Yosef Leiner of Ishbitza. As you can see, lived in the first half of the 19th century. Hasidic master that I really live. I live in his Beit Midrash, even though there are 200 years between us. I actually tell people that I live in Poland of the 19th century with visitation rights to the 21st century. And many people actually believe me. I use that line when I go into stores to buy an electric appliance, because there I'm totally lost. I use that line to just explain a little bit about what my challenges are here. And the Ishbitzer Rebbe, he is asking the question of what happened the night before receiving the Torah. Because imagine, the Midrash tells us that, the Midrash in Shir HaShirim tells us that night they slept. Yashnu lahem Yisrael kol oto halayla. Now, can you imagine for a moment you're about to receive Torah the next morning and you slept, right? It's like, who sleeps the night before their wedding? Who sleeps the night, God forbid, the night before a major surgery? Who sleeps before the night before the grandchildren are arriving from Israel and you haven't seen them for 5 years? I don't know what it is. Like, you don't sleep the night before. And here the Midrash tells us that we slept the night before. And the reason for that is, רצה השם יתברך לגלות לישראל את אורו לכל אחד כפי מדרגתו. God wanted to reveal a specific and unique gift to each one of us, specific to who we were. לכן אם היה הכנה מצידם, if we had time to prepare, אם כן לא היה קבלת התורה רק כפי התערותא דלתתא. ומה נחשב כל מה שיכול לאדם להשתדל ולעשות הכנה הלא מעט הוא. If we had prepared, says the Ishbitzer Rebbe, the Meh HaShiloach. Meh HaShiloach is the name of the book. Ishbitza is the where he comes from, hence the Ishbitzer Rebbe. He said we would receive only based on what we were capable of preparing. We would have it, we in our mind would have an image of what God was about to grant, and based on that we would prepare. And that actually what God wanted to give was so much greater than that. And therefore we slept that night. The Midrash says it was a beautiful, beautiful weather, like the slumber of spring, so that when we woke up, we were immediately there. We were immediately there. There was no time to prepare. And therefore we had to receive in the moment what was handed to us. Like there was no, I think also, I want to say that's why I think actually this tradition, I know it's a mystical tradition of only a few hundred years, to learn all night. I think it functions in the same way. For those of us who stay up and learn all night, like by the time we get to receiving the Torah, when it's read, when the Torah is being read and that portion is being read, and it's as if in that moment we're receiving the Torah, we're so exhausted and we're so, I want to say, overwhelmed from all the words that we learned all night, that whatever we're given in that moment, that's what we receive. So that is the Ishbitzer Rebbe, and he wants to offer this question of like, what does God want to give on the one hand? What are we capable on the other hand? So that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is what we'll see in the teachings of the Piasetzner Rebbe, the Derech HaMelech, and this is the teaching that he gave over in Shavuot, because you see, Shavuot is a holiday which is rich with this encounter and this engagement with the divine, and then how do we negotiate where we're coming from and what is we're receiving. And the Derech HaMelech, the Piasetzner Rebbe, this is a teaching that he gave over Shavuot of 1925. Now he's most known because of his teachings in the Esh Kodesh, Holy Fire, which is teachings that he gave over in the Warsaw Ghetto. And yet I love learning actually the teachings from prior to the Shoah, and to get a sense of the Torah that he brought into the world before the Shoah was even a reality in any way, any fragment of the mind. And here on Shavuot of 1925, on the first day, he says the following, "Omnam zot rak ha'atchala." This is only the beginning. Shetzarich ha'adam la'asot. ומי שעובד את השם תמיד בדעה קדושה. Someone who serves Hashem with, I want to say, דעה קדושה, a pure, a holy consciousness. Meaning that one's consciousness is aligned with God's will. אז נעשה כולו איש אחר, becomes someone other. And I love this phrase, מין איש שאי אפשר לו עתה לצייר בדעתו. Someone that you can't imagine. You can't muster up that image in your own being. And so I wanna say for a moment, like, what does it mean? Have you found yourself? Like, I want to ask for a moment, right? To think for a moment. Have you found yourself saying things that you can't ever imagine that came out of your mouth? Or have you found yourself thinking a thought that you thought to yourself, I could never think that. I could never think that. To get a flavor of walking the streets of Yerushalayim, I said Shana Tova to a woman that I knew her like 25 years ago, and since then I haven't seen her, and we bump into each other on the street once in a while now. And I said Shana Tova, and she said Shana Tova, and then she says to me, my friend, she's 60, and she's expecting her first child. And I'm thinking to myself, why is she saying this to me? Out of the blue. And I'm thinking like, oh, maybe. And I'm like, are you crazy? Did you just think for a moment? I'm saying to myself, did you just think for a moment of having a child? And I'm not at 60, but I'm not 55 either. Like, did you just think for a moment? And there it was, for a moment. I had that thought because this woman on the street just told me the story about her friend who was expecting. Okay. So here it is, the Piaseczner Rebbe says, when we hand ourselves over to the divine, and for each of one of us, I want to say surrender is a loaded word, hand ourselves over is a loaded concept, the divine or God or the other or the one, whatever word constellation in which that you hold on to in your world of beliefs, that's not so simple. The Piaseczner Rebbe says, when you enter into this relationship with God, you don't know how you're going to come out of it. You don't know how you're going to go into it. You don't know how you're going to come. Maybe you have a sense of how you're going into it, but who we're going to be as we're in the relationship and how we're going to come out of it, we don't know. I always say to chatan and kala, chatan and chatan, or kala and kala, I always say to a couple, when they're about to marry, I said, you don't marry the person you know. I said, if you think that when you stand under the chuppah, you're marrying the person you know, I promise you that the morning after your wedding, you're waking up with a stranger in bed. Because who they were when they woke up yesterday morning and who they are when they wake up this morning, they're not the same person. I said, we marry the person we want to spend the rest of our life getting to know. And if when we stand under the chuppah, we say to this person, I'm not marrying the person I know, I'm marrying the person that I want to spend the rest of my life getting to know, then that actually is the person that I wake up with every morning. Because every morning I say, I don't know who you are, but I want to spend the rest of my life getting to know who you are. And the same is in our religious experiences, in our relationship with the divine. The same is true. Master of the world, I don't know what it means to be in a relationship with God. I don't know what this asks of me. I don't know who I'm going to be. I don't know what I believe today. Maybe I know what I believe today, but I don't know if I'm going to believe this tomorrow. Maybe I know what my Shabbat is, and I don't know. That's the question. And the Piaseczner Rebbe says, is asks us to continuously be in this place of change. Okay. So what does all of this have to do with Natan Tokef? You're going to ask yourselves. And this opportunity to change. I want to offer the following, right? Because as I said, it's not only that we change, we have the possibility of changing and being other, but I think one challenge is also our siddur tefillah and our machzor. And how is it that we find a way continuously, again and again, to see it new, to see it other, to experience it differently? And as I said at the beginning, like for me, Natana Tokef this year must be other and must be different. It can't be. It can't be the same Natana Tokef as last Rosh Hashanah, last Yom Kippur. And therefore, I want to make the following suggestion. The following suggestion is the following. These, what you have in blue, right? Me b'cherev, who by sword, v'b'chaya, by a beast, or by famine, or by thirst, or by earthquake, or by plague, or strangulation, or stoning, who will come to peace and who will go crazy, who will have peace of mind, who will be tormented. Yes? I want to offer this not as decrees, but as invitations. And invitations, a list of possible elements of my being that I'm willing to surrender. Maybe am I willing to surrender my peace of mind to be in God's service? Am I actually willing, there's a story that I tell, there's a narrative that I have that is like, woe me. Maybe me, ani, who will be impoverished, maybe I'm gonna let go of my impoverishment this year. Maybe I'm not gonna tell those stories anymore. Me it yasar, some years like I'm really wed to my suffering. I'm really wed to my suffering. And I'm saying, okay, God, this year I'm surrendering my suffering. I'm going to tell a different story. I'm going to tell a different narrative. So I want to offer all of these possibilities, my riches. Like, what are my riches am I going to offer to God this year? Or those things, those things that drive me crazy, right? Okay, like this year, God, I'm surrendering my craziness. This is it. This year, we're entering into it without the story. So I want to offer this year, we have about a minute, and I want to offer this year as not only are we, but our prayer book is different, and our machzor is different, and therefore for me, Natana Tokef this year is not a list of decrees that God is going to decree this year. What of all of these, God forbid, will fall upon me, or maybe gratefully will fall upon me, but they are all invitations for me to look at the list, ask myself, who am I in regard to this list? And maybe one of the list is something that I want to offer to God as a gift for me. And after I conclude our learning, I will post our source sheets, so you will be able to take them with you as well. And I think we have, since I started a few minutes late, if there's like a short question, a very brief question, if you have a 15-second question and I have a 45-second answer, we can go for there. Okay. So in that case, I'll close with a closing prayer. May we all find ourselves in this coming Rosh Hashanah in a place that supports us, that sustains us, that strengthens us. May we enter into a year of health and healing for all of God's children. May we be able to detect when others are in need, and may we have the courage to ask for help when we ourselves are in need for support. Shana Tova.
Amen.
Shana Tova.
Amen.
Amen. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.